Hey, what's going on, everybody? It's the Cavemen Podcast. I'm your boy, Anthony.
Yo, this is TJ. Good to be back.
That's right. We're going to lay down a couple things here for you guys. We got some good stuff. We got some sports coming on to you guys. A little bit about the AAF and what's going on over there. We got some politics. We got some spiritual issues. I know you got some things you want to hit up on, TJ.
Yo, I got an article talking about Mike Pence hitting on socialism and bratty college kids.
Brats.
Yes. Crazy. I also have an interesting article about atheism becoming the largest religion in America, surprisingly. Ooh. And we're even going to get a little deep and serious talking about suicide, talking about issues of the heart towards the end. And
got some good stuff, huh?
Stick with us to the end. It's going to be a good one.
Yeah. We got some good stuff for you guys. Just a quick little bit of information for you guys. We are the Cavemen Podcast. You find us on Twitter at cavemen_podcast. We got an email, thecavemenpodcast@gmail.com, all one word. SoundCloud, find us on SoundCloud at www.soundcloud.com/cavemen_podcast. We also have a YouTube channel, The Cavemen Podcast. You can find us on all of these different social accounts right there. And we're going to dive right on in.
Here we are, episode 2.
Numero dos. Hey. So,
yo, I think, I'm full Mexican, but I'm not bilingual whatsoever. So, what are your roots? I don't even know what to think about you.
What did you just say right now? Numero dos? What does that mean? I'm a halfer, man. I'm a half breeder. You know what I mean? I'm kind of a mutt. I got my half Mexican, half, I guess, white.
Yeah, some roots. You need to go do one of them tests and see if you got some Pocahontas blood in you. Maybe some brother blood.
Ooh, I think I do, bro. These curls are no joke. You know what I'm saying?
Many of you can't see Ant-Man's face, but he's got curls like Shirley Temple. Absolutely beautiful.
I got some locks. I ain't gonna lie.
And I know they ain't all natural.
Oh, bro.
I know you do work on that, son.
Bro, this is al natural right here. Dang.
I'm impressed.
I used to say curls for the girls, but it's curls for my wife now. You know what I'm saying?
Curly cute. Cool, man. Ant-Man, what you got for us?
So I was checking out what was going on with the AAF, you know what I mean? Because they were 8 games into it and it got shut down. They're supposed to have a full-blown season, but it got shut down after 8 games, you know what I mean? And so I even heard, too, I read in a couple articles that there was their stuff was waiting for them in the lobby, bro. They was waiting for them in the lobby when they got home after their games.
No, that ain't right.
That's cold. That's dirty.
For our audience that may not be familiar with what you're talking about, go ahead and lay some groundwork.
All right, so AAF, it's the Alliance of American Football, was supposed to be a developmental league for players striving to become NFL players. Their dreams come true, all that good stuff. And so, without getting too much into the whole business part of it, it ended up basically just falling through. And so these players now are not, I wouldn't say stranded, because I would say actually some of them, their dreams did come true. They got 12 players and a growing list that actually signed with the NFL teams, surprisingly enough, right? So it ended up working out.
The fact is all of these players' futures are in question.
Yep.
We don't know what's going to happen.
True that. I would say they probably have an equal enough opportunity as a rookie coming in. Probably they got some game time, they got some gameplay, but to take note, since I am a Raider fan and I'll go Raiders. There was one, excuse me, no, just there was one that got signed, a defensive end by the name of Alex Barrett. He recorded 2 sacks and 15 tackles. Dude, 6'3", 260 pounds. Do you think stuff like this, do you think these skill set and everything is going to translate well to the NFL?
Well, if there's a prototype, this homie fits it.
I would say so. This dude's stout.
Right. And then you also can't neglect that he did do work when he was called upon.
He got sacks. He did some. He did some.
Right.
Obviously good enough to catch the eye of players of teams in need. You know what I mean?
Of the great John Gruden.
Legend, bro. Walking legend. Dang.
So, but yeah, to answer your question, I think, he did what he had to do.
True that.
To put himself in a position for greatness, and that's all you can do at this point.
True that. You know what I mean? And obviously it wasn't just him. There was other players that were able to do so as well. So, I'm looking at this story and I'm looking at how it got shut down. And I'm looking at it and I'm kind of looking at it with a biblical lens here, because you look at it and I'm thinking that first scripture comes to mind is Romans chapter 5, verses 3-4. It talks about perseverance, right? So it says these words, and not only that, but we also glory in tribulations, knowing that tribulation produces perseverance, and perseverance, character, and character, hope. So here we have a display that the true grit right here. True grit. These players have to persevere, right? So, 8 games into the season, their dreams are just cut off prematurely. Right, hey, nobody likes premature.
Yay!
Dang, great days think alike. You know what I'm saying?
That's no fun for no one.
But so we, I'm looking at that and I'm like, bro, this is where their true grit is going to be tested, where they have a possibility, just like the Bible says, where this tribulation is are they going to persevere? And if they do persevere, this is where God says, you know what, there's character I can develop in this person. You know what I mean?
Absolutely. This day and age, maybe not even this day and age, but people think of tribulations, people think about hardship, and, when life's not going right, it's automatically has these negative connotations to it, like shouldn't be happening. But that's what I appreciate about the Bible and even the God we serve, is he keeps it real. He's saying, keep what? It real. Hey, we serve a real G. Oh, dang. And so he tells us, hey, in these times of hardship and tribulation, I'm a God that can use the negative and make it positive. So he's saying, hey, this is gonna produce perseverance in you, this is gonna produce character in you, and not only that, you always have a hope in the God that we serve.
That's right. And so I'm thinking about this because it just shows that you cannot trust anything, and you can't trust anything. There's no guarantees, you know what I mean? And so I'm thinking about Matthew 6, chapter 6, verses 19-20 says this: do not lay up for yourself treasures on earth where moth and rust and destroy, and where thieves break in and steal, but lay up for yourself treasures in heaven, where neither moth nor rust destroys, and where thieves cannot break in. So you look at this and you're thinking, You just can't trust the system. You can't put your faith into these worldly things, worldly principles, worldly objects, whatever it is on this earth. You just can't put your trust in it. You can't. There's nothing that's guaranteed. But the one thing that is guaranteed is eternal life through Jesus Christ. You know what I'm saying? Right. That's the only thing that we can bank on. That's the only thing that we can rely on to have any sort of peace, any sort of hope. And so you put your treasures, your full heart and faith into something like this, you're just going to end up empty or disappointed. You know what I mean?
Yeah, absolutely. With the unknown factors, you leave yourself up to the unknown.
Yep. True that. And so, the only thing that you can trust in this world is God. And I mean, the with the AAF shutting down like that, just further proves the point that no system can be fully trusted. You know what I mean? And so just crazy, just blows my mind that that was something that was almost for sure. There's so much money put into that. There's so much hope put into that. Players devoting, committing, and all these things, and just severed.
Right. Yeah, and I also look forward to see what's going to come out of this. Right. Obviously, we're going to be rooting for your boy. I know the Cardinals had signed a couple of offensive linemen, or we need some offensive line help. Yeah. So let's see what stories and what can develop out of this. And
maybe this dude will be the next Khalil Mack. You know what I'm saying?
Man, them's big shoes. Them big shoes to fill.
Bro, that hurts, bro. I actually think I might start crying because I mentioned that right now. I'm still recovering, bro. Dang. Hey, if he comes back, he'll make my jersey worth something again because I bought it when he left. I was like, no, I don't believe it. I'm gonna go buy that jersey.
Hey, bro, he's off to bigger and better things.
Dang, that dude killed it last year. Anywho, I know you got some stuff you want to go over. You're talking about Pence, right?
Yeah, so I found this interesting article on the Daily Wire, and it was written here by, it looks like Hank Berrien, published on April 5th of this year. And the title goes, Pence delivers powerful response to students enamored with socialism.
Oof.
So here
Powerful
he is.
response.
Right, so let's just jump right into the article. It tells us that more than 100 students protested Vice President Mike Pence when he went to Rice University. And the big thing that they portrayed him as is bigoted. So he had all these students come for support for the LGBT community. They had posters and signs saying, Vice bigot, no to Pence, yes to peace. Even going as far as saying, go away, Satan.
Ooh.
So
dirty.
My boy Pence is not one to bend over for the LGBTs. So he hits them hard. Ain't
nobody trying to bend over for them fools.
Hey, you a Christian, we ain't bending over for them. Remember that. That's not a road you all want to go down.
No, sir. All right, so go on. Sorry, my bad. Go for it.
Anyways, so he's here, and he's quoted as saying, and as we gather here at Rice University, one of the great institutions of higher learning in America, the truth is we do so at a time of growing support for socialism and a growing intolerance for diverse viewpoints on many college campuses around America. He goes even further, speech codes, safe zones, and intolerance against people whose faith or economic philosophy are no longer considered fashionable by the new American left. He goes
American left.
He goes further, and he talks about socialism and says, and so as we reflect on the cause of freedom in this hemisphere, let me close with a word to this rising generation. So Pence is trying to drop wisdom.
Okay, just drop it, Pence. Drop it, Pence. Let's see what you got.
He says, those of you who feel drawn to the siren song of socialism, be careful what you wish for. Socialism is not the road to freedom. Socialism is the road to government control, and it grows in the soil of censorship.
Ooh, that's heavy.
So we all know that Mike Pence is a Christian, and one thing that when I'm looking at this, obviously from a spiritual take, is that we can replace this word socialism with sin, and it can you can say the same thing.
Ooh, okay.
So sin is not the road to freedom. Sin is the road to control, right? It grows in the soil of censorship, or what I'm going to turn that into is keeping back truth.
Okay.
Right?
Okay.
So
that's
with
an interesting
censorship,
point.
You hinder someone from speaking the truth that you don't want to hear.
I got you.
Right?
I got you. So okay. So talking about socialism specifically here, I got a question for you. So what kind of implications would come along with socialism? If that were to be implemented here in the U.S. I mean, what things does this ideology produce?
So things that stand out to me, I mean, especially amongst these college kids, is the cry is for free health care, free college, taking from the rich.
Yep.
Yeah, taking from the rich and given to the poor. And basically what it's kind of breeding, in my opinion, is a lack of work ethic. Anything that's given to you for free is not something that you've earned. It's something that's given.
Yep.
So with that, you're breeding a mentality or a system that's not going to allow people to grow, allow people to become who they need to be and bigger and better things. Not only that, there's a lack of, contribution to
Yep.
society.
Yep.
When you're
Yep.
when it's a gimme, 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 how can you expect to give back when all you're wanting is to receive? And the
Yep.
Bible even hits that on the head. It's saying, it's more blessed to give than to receive,
Yep.
right?
True that. True
So
that.
the scripture that comes to mind for me is Luke chapter 16, verses 10 through 12. And it goes on to say that he who is faithful in what is least is faithful also in much.
Oh, that's a
He
good one.
is unjust in what is least is unjust also in much.
That's
So the
heavy.
Bible is requiring growth from us. It's saying, hey,
Right.
you know what? When you start off with something little, be faithful with that, and we can move on to bigger and better things.
Right. God says I can trust you with something more. So basically it's, if you can't handle the little that you're given, if you're complaining, oh, I've been, I'm a victim of my ancestors, I'm a victim of the system, whatever it is, and you can't even handle the little what's given to you, and just because, you're expecting to receive something from, I don't know, from a new system or whatever, then all of a sudden you think you're going to be able to handle something more. You know what I mean?
Right.
It sounds like it's a mentality that needs to be dealt with. That's
Absolutely.
a heart issue at the root of it.
Yeah, so people think that giving more money is going to fix a problem, right?
Right.
But the Bible's saying, hey, even if they have little, if they're unfaithful in that, giving someone more is not going to fix their problem.
Yep.
It is. We have to find what that problem is, whether it is, a spirit of poverty or a fatherless home or all these different factors that can contribute to the real reason when it all just boils down to sin. It's a sin reason.
Yep. True that.
And another thing, the last point I want to hit on before it gets too long is socialism, when it comes down to it, is you're putting your trust in another entity other than God.
Oh,
right.
That's a good one. Yeah, definitely. I mean, you're relying on the government to support you, basically. You know what I mean? Support you for education, support your living. Yeah, I get you.
Yeah. So, I mean, the scripture that comes to me is Romans chapter 12, verse 2. It says, "Do not be conformed to this world, but be transformed by the renewing of your mind, that you may prove what is that good and acceptable and the perfect will of God." So here God is saying, hey, this world, don't get your ideals, don't get your politics, don't get your
principles,
your means, your principles. But hey, you know what? God has a bigger and better things for you. He wants to be the one to mold and renew your mind and show you the person you need to be to excel and
be able to grow.
Right. And what he
definitely
says is a perfect will that he has for your life.
Yeah. And it's interesting you say that, because a lot of people don't like to be told what to do. They don't like to be told, if they're wrong, especially in this generation, with the whole, the snowflake generation, individuality. I'm different from everybody else. And the truth is okay, yeah, there's some truth to that, but it doesn't mean that whatever you feel is right is right.
Right. And that's, we can also hit on that. That's a great topic. And for episode 3.
Dang, coming up.
Let's do it. That's right. Hey, and just to end this segment, I have one more verse in 1 John chapter 2, verses 15 through 17.
Bring it.
The Bible tells us, "Do not love the world or the things in this world. If anyone loves the world, the love of the Father is not in him. For all that is in the world, the lust of the flesh, the lust of the eyes, and the pride of life is not of the Father, but is of the world. And the world is passing away, and the lust of it, but he who does the will of God abides forever."
Ooh, there it is, laying it down. So it almost sounds like what Pence. It almost sounds like what Pence is saying too. I mean, he obviously laid down. He just laid it down. He's like, look, I'm going to address this right now. You know what I mean?
Right.
He just laid it down. He laid it right in front of him. Look, I'm going to tell you right now. Careful what you wish for. Socialism, it's not as good as you think it is. It sounds good. It sounds like the perfect ideal, society. But I mean, you don't even realize the past societies that have implemented such a structure have failed.
Right. Absolutely.
But good. That's interesting article, man, and good points, bro. I mean, it's a trip, man. It's a trip, the mentality of some people. You know what I mean? But I got an article here of my own that drew my interest here, and that's of course, I'm sure it's probably not not news anymore, but it's Biden. Biden accused by 2 more women of inappropriate touching, and Fox News, of course, hits on this, and he says this in response. Listen to this, because it's interesting. It's interesting. Listen here. His response says, he tweeted this, by the way. Social norms are changing. I understand that, and I've heard what these women are saying. I'm like, social norms are changing? Really? I mean, it used to be okay to sniff a woman's hair and get into her personal space, but now it's not. That's changed. You know,
maybe if we were, I see my dog do that.
Oh,
Yeah, they bend around, they turn around and sniffs each other's.
Ooh, dang, there it is.
We ain't dogs.
He goes on to say, politics to me has always been about making connections, but I will be more mindful about respecting personal space in the future. Ooh, he's trying to make them connections. You know what I'm saying? He's trying, come here. I got something to tell you, girl. Come here. It's just, it blows my mind. It's always been about making connections. I get it, but it doesn't mean you got to get into somebody's personal space to make that connection. You know what I mean? There's multiple incidents where he's gone just ridiculously into these girls' faces, giving them little Eskimo kisses. Chihuahua.
Yeah.
You know?
There's tons of YouTube compilations
Oh,
show just these
memes,
bizarre things.
Memes. Oh man, and they crack me up. Speaking of memes, it's not really memes. I guess it's a bit of a video, but President Trump, of course, mocked him. And some people are like, "Oh, the president shouldn't be blah blah blah," but I find it humorous. You can look it up. I have an article here by HuffPost, but you can look it up, and I find it funny. It's Biden giving his response, but behind him, he's creeping up on himself, behind a chair, and he comes up on his shoulder. It's just funny. But the thing is, bro, is we don't realize that there's so much, to put it into words, to look at it from a biblical perspective, I should say. And I'm looking at Matthew 7:3, and it says these words, "And why do you look at the speck in your brother's eye, but do not consider the plank in your own eye?" So they with this, they're bashing Trump, man. This dude hasn't had a break during his whole presidency about anything and everything they can get their hands on. And little do they now realize, which I don't know how they haven't realized, it's just been ignored, that Biden has been all up in these women's faces, bro. All up in their business. You know what I'm saying? Yeah. And it now it's coming out now, but it's been happening since. I mean, I have an incident here that happened in 2012. You know what I mean? And so it blows my mind that all of a sudden now it's an issue, but they don't want to. They ignore it and want to focus on Trump's issues when they don't realize that there's something they got to deal with themselves.
Right. And what it is it's almost this moral superiority.
Ooh, good point.
So it's these, I mean, and we all can be guilty of this, but like just from the lens of what you're taking it from, it's like, okay, like you want to tell this man, what he's doing is wrong and he's not fit to be president because of this, and they're eating their own,
Yeah.
But it's just like, okay, well, where are your morals from?
Yeah. Where's your moral compass?
I know it ain't biblical.
Right. Yeah.
All of these Democrats are running on the platform of pro-choice and gay rights and all these different things that fly in the face of
completely
what God
God
actually calls moral.
Right. And so that's a great point. You know what I mean? They have no moral compass to base their morals off of. So when what it seems to me is that they've created this perception of whatever you think is right is right. Whatever you feel like is right is right. You know, if you feel like you need to go murder a couple people today, as long as you feel that's right, then go ahead. You know, and then just go ahead and plead insanity. You know,
Right.
it blows my mind. There's no, like you said, it's like a moral superiority. And then when something like this happens, it's like, oh yeah, that is bad. Oh yeah, that is bad. But it's like, well, where are you basing your moral principles off of then?
Yeah. And it's exactly why whenever, these things actually come out, it's by the same people, like you said, who are pointing at the speck in the other person's eye. You know what I
Yep.
mean?
Yep. For
Just
sure.
like, of course,
And
these are going to come out in your sinful nature that you don't want that are,
yeah.
creeping up.
Right. And it's funny he brings up, oh, social norms are changing. And I'm like, well, okay, if that is the case at all, I'll tell you one thing that doesn't change, and that's God.
Right.
God
Exactly.
never changes. Social norms may change, but God doesn't ever change. The moral principles that, people have, at least I would hope they would have in their heart, those that God's what God has put in place doesn't change.
Right.
God's the same today as he was yesterday and tomorrow. You know what I mean? And so God doesn't change. And so that's why it's important to have some sort of moral compass or some sort of basis of truth to base those morals off of. You know what I mean?
So if we're taking this, okay, let's take the heat off of Biden's shoulders and let's put it on our own in a sense and say, hey, okay, those of you listening, if you don't want something biting you in the butt 5, 10, 15, 25 years from now, then hey, you know what? Where is your morality? Find your morality, your morals, in what God says in the Bible, and you don't have to worry about that stuff
Right.
coming out and biting you in the butt later.
Right. And, that's not to say that everybody has a past. People have a past, of course. I have a past. You have a past. Not to say that there aren't consequences to your sin or choices, because there are. And God doesn't say it's a walk in the park, once you end up giving your life to him or anything like that. But there's no doubt that when you do live off of principles or the morals that have been set in place in the Bible, that you have a security of who you are as an individual and have a basis, a foundation for the way you live your life, and it's an accurate one. It doesn't go up and down, left, right, whatever. But just an interesting article that I saw that I just had to touch on. It just was interesting to me because it's just so funny, the Democratic Party. You know what I mean? It's funny, and we can touch on that stuff later, but I don't want to take too much time here. But I know you had some things you wanted to talk about that are a bit more personal, a bit more deep, a little bit heavy.
Well, that's my last point.
Oh,
but
ooh.
The in-betweener, the in-between the bread,
hey.
What I got right here is an interesting article, again, from the Daily Wire by Michael J. Knowles, published on April 7th of this year. It says, God help us, atheism becomes largest religion in U.S. So,
dang.
yeah,
That's
this has shifted within the last year. And because
I believe it.
Our tagline is "In God We Trust,"
Ooh,
right?
Right.
If
Yep.
atheism is now the biggest, who do we? They don't believe in God.
Yourself, bro. You trust yourself and whatever you feel.
So here I have, according to the General Social Survey, the number of Americans who have no religion has increased 266% over the past 3 decades, and now account for 23.1% of the population, just barely edging out Catholics and evangelicals as the nation's dominant faith.
Dang. Okay, so what do you think has caused that kind of a shift in our society? I mean, do you think it's just a new generation, a new culture that has been developed, or do you think there's been events that have caused people to doubt God, or?
No, well, the biggest shift is the lack of spirituality, the lack of church being implemented in society as we know it.
That's a good point.
In schools and in the home, and the entertainment and everything that surrounds us has nothing to do with God whatsoever.
Yep. That true that.
Yeah.
True that. You bring up an interesting point, because, and I say that because there's so much more pull for people to be tolerant and be okay with other people's beliefs, and the biggest thing that I always hear is, well, if you're a Christian, then you shouldn't be judging. You know what I mean? And so then it doesn't, that's not, and the thing is people don't realize that the Bible actually does say we are to discern right from wrong. We need to have that ability to be able to do so. We need to say something's right and something's wrong. And so the fact of people becoming tolerant now just means that it's like watered down. It's watered down Christianity, I would say.
Well, here's an interesting thing that the article actually brings up. It says, as religiosity has declined, social ills have abounded, and it gives us stats. It says nearly 1 in 5 American adults suffer from anxiety disorders. 20% of American adults, which now constitute the most common mental illness in the country.
Wow.
Interesting. 1 in 6 Americans take antidepressant drugs, a 65% surge over just 15 years.
Dang.
The problem is particularly acute among younger Americans, while depression diagnoses have increased 33% since 2013.
Ooh.
That number is up 47% among millennials and 63% among teenagers. Coincidentally, suicide rates among American teenagers have increased 70% since 2006.
Dang, those are some numbers right there, bro.
Yeah, so I mean, America has always had this, this link between it, God.
Right.
No matter what denomination that was, no matter what, there was always this, link between, yes, okay, like I said, we put it on our money, and God we trust.
Right.
Prayers and so on and so forth. And verse that kind of pulls out to me is Ephesians chapter 4, verses 18. It says, having their understanding darkened, the understanding about God has been darkened for some reason. Why is it being turned off? And I already went over the points: entertainment, the home, schools, so on and so forth. It says, being alienated from the life of God because of the ignorance that is in them, because of the blindness of their heart. So here we have a generation that don't have God. They're alienated from the Spirit of God. The Bible says the life of God. They have no supernatural experience. And it's like, that's one thing that's really kept me from from believing that there is a God, because I've had that supernatural encounter with him.
Right.
It's not just emotion. It's not just, how I felt or anything like that.
Some butterflies in your stomach, bro.
Right, exactly. What it was is an actual touch.
An experience.
An experience, a supernatural experience with the God, which
with the loving
God.
Yeah,
a generation that lacks that. And I believe that scripture just hits it on the head.
Dude, I would completely agree. I mean, I same thing for me. I had an experience with God, and that it wasn't because of how I felt, or you heard in my testimony. If you listen to the last episode, if you haven't, tune in. But my testimony was, as soon as I repented from my sin at that altar, bro, lifted up and felt that weight, and it wasn't an emotion. That wasn't an emotion. That was an experience of feeling of the stress and the anxiety, the depression that was coming upon me. Like you said, teenagers experience depression in this society more so than they have in the past, and I can attest to that. You know what I mean? But your point brings me to a spiritual issue that I wanted to touch on a bit before we close this up here. But this I got this book. It's a good book, great book, called Quit Church. It's by Chris Songskin. Okay, and I'm just going to touch on this briefly, but I want to get your thoughts here from this statement that he says. He says this: everything in our society screams that the most important person on the planet is you. I mean, do you think that's an accurate claim?
Oh, of course, I agree with that 100%. It's about me, homie.
Yeah.
This my world.
It's all about me.
Hey, just ask the wife. Yeah.
I don't care what time it is.
Oh,
you're tired?
No, we can't put that. Oh,
no. But
man.
So listen up here. And it's true, because this generation is so self-absorbed and indulged in itself, and there's an issue that stems from the beginning, even with Adam and Eve and Cain and Abel. You know what I mean? They had their own personal desires, their own what they felt, and they indulged into that, and that's what caused the sin that they got their life in turmoil and into. And so he gives an example found in Mark chapter 10, verse 33 through 37. I'm not going to read it just for time's sake, but he basically is talking about when Jesus is telling his disciples about his death and his resurrection, and what's going to happen to him in Jerusalem. And two of his disciples come over, and James and John, and they basically say, "We want you to do us a favor, save the best seats for us in heaven when you get there." They're not even considering what Jesus is going through. They're not even considering his emotions or anything like that. They say, "Hey, you know what, God, I know you got the hookup, Jesus. So when you die, it's gonna happen, like you said, it's gonna happen. So just let me sit on the right and he can sit on the left, and we'll call it good, right?"
Prime
It's funny.
Hey,
funny.
Man, I give them props for
Dang,
hey,
that
the
takes
wrong
some
heart,
goal.
But homies came up, man.
Yeah. Dang.
Imagine, hey, it's like one of those conversations. Like the worst he can say is no.
Dang, hey, that's the truth right there. Well, they're probably discussing on the side, hey, like, you want to ask him or do you want me to? Rock, paper, scissors.
Yeah, and then didn't their mama was the one that they ended up getting mama to come up and ask Jesus.
Yep.
Oh,
Mom,
I just said
bid him to come over here.
I said ask.
We gonna ask him. We're gonna ask him, bro.
Literally never has come out of my mouth before. Anyway.
I don't know, bro. You said you're full blown Mexican. I don't know. I don't know. I know your dad.
Anyways,
so basically, I'm sorry, bro. I didn't mean to cut off your point earlier, but it just made me come to this spiritual issue, because you're talking about how I guess I was talking about this snowflake generation that's all about me. It's about how I feel and what I think is right. And so basically, to sum this all up, Jesus ends up giving them an answer to their selfishness in Mark 10, 42 through 45. Again, I'm not going to read that, but in Mark 10, 42 through 45, he gives them an answer to their selfishness, and he basically says, "Whoever wants to be a leader among you must be a servant." Yay. And to us, it's like, ooh, I have to care about others? I have to serve others? You know what I mean? Right. And it goes against our nature. But this is what God says guards our hearts from being self-absorbed. And so, the self-made mentality that this generation has welcomed into the culture, it needs to be changed because it's a real issue, and it starts, it starts permeating throughout society, and it causes so many issues. I mean, you can go on, but I thought it was an interesting thing. It was on my head, it was on my mind, and I just thought that, there's new theologies coming out, free grace theology, that diminishes the gospel and waters it down, and doesn't really make sense. You know what I mean? We can do a series on that. There's a book on that, and it's a great book, but we can do a series on that later on.
Yeah, what's that book?
So it's called Free Grace Theology and 5 Ways It Diminishes the Gospel. It's by Wayne Grudem. But it's a great book, man. It's a good book. Dives into the theology of that whole free grace doctrine. And yeah, but nevertheless, society obviously has an issue that it's a spiritual issue, and it's causing a whole shift in our society in the U.S.
Yeah. And so basically, when it comes down to it, we can always boil it down to the issue of sin, right?
Oh yeah. We can always yeah, you're right.
So yeah, anyone who comes to me and they say, it's all grace and free grace, and no matter what I do, nothing can separate me and my salvation. When I die, I'm going to make it into heaven. I can be committing adultery on my wife and die and still make it. Just, it's almost just a security blanket for people to say, I'm good living the way I'm living.
Yeah. It makes people feel better about themselves, about their sin.
Yeah. It just gives them a scapegoat, man.
Exactly.
And anyone, and if you're in our audience, anyone that comes to you, or maybe you believe that yourself, the question I present is, what haven't you surrendered to God?
Ooh, a challenge.
Right.
Challenge your thinking here, because that's a good point. What haven't you surrendered to God? Because that is really what we end up wrestling with, are things that we haven't given to God to help us out with. That's heavy, bro. That's heavy. And you're hitting me with these heavies.
Not only that, you're just selling yourself short.
True that.
So the verse that kind of comes to mind is 2 Timothy chapter 4, verses 2 through 4. It says, preach the word. So preach truth. Preach God. Preach what he says. And be ready in season and out of season. The Bible tells us to be straightforward, convince, rebuke, exhort with all long suffering and teaching. Because it talks about the time that we live in, says, for the time will come when they will not endure sound doctrine, but according to their own desires. Because they have itching ears, they will heap up for themselves teachers. So they're going to have teachers to tell them exactly what they want to hear.
Yeah. Yep.
And they will turn away their ears from truth and be turned aside to fables.
Dang. That's some wisdom. Dropping some wisdom down.
Hey, it's not me.
Dang. Yeah. But anyway, there's obviously issues in the society, that spiritual issues, heart issues, wrong mentalities. But you know what? I feel like we brought some stuff to the plate. We got some stuff for people to chew on, and I definitely have some stuff we can go over next week. But nevertheless, everybody, hit us up. We want to hear suggestions. We want to hear topics. We want to hear your thoughts, critiques. We can take the haters. You know what I'm saying? We can take the haters, the lovers, the fighters,
and
the backbiters.
Bring it on.
Yeah, heck yeah, bro. So anyways, guys, we went over the sports. We went over some political events that happened, some current events. We went over some spiritual issues that are things that we think need to be, I guess, resolved or not resolved, but need to be dealt with, nevertheless.
Absolutely. Whether that be in our heart or in the heart of society.
Yep. True that. And what did you say the other day, TJ? That I was like, dang, that's what we got to live by right there. You like the word?
You like the word.
If you like the word, spread the word.
Spread the word.
There it is. There's the call to action. If you like the word, spread the word. If you like us, let us know. Subscribe on YouTube. Hit that like button. Episode 2. It's the Cavemen Podcast.
We out. See you next week.
Yeah.